Hi, I'm Ashton, and I wanted to talk about something that I've kind of been avoiding for a while, and that is autism. Before I start, I do want to say a few things. Autism Speaks is very bad. When you do research on autism, they're one of the first sources to pop up, but they are really, really awful. Please do not donate to them, please do not support them, please do not take any information from them. I could make another video on the why, but I just wanted to get that off the table. On the table, put that table.
This is something that I would normally cut out, but I kind of wanted to leave it in just as like something of an example. So here's me just casually rocking. I do this constantly. It's kind of a habit at this point.
Another thing I wanted to say, I am by no means a mental health professional. I am not diagnosing myself here. I am not looking to diagnose anyone else. That should be obvious. But the next thing is, if you are someone that uses autistic as an insult, if you are someone that has any hatred of autistic people, you can just leave, okay? Autistic is not a fucking insult, and that's all. Just leave, please. Leave me alone. And third, the reason that I'm talking about this is not for attention. I really do not want pity whatsoever. Please, if I get pity comments, I will probably delete them. And what I mean by pity in this case is like, I'm so sorry that you're struggling with autism. No. One more thing before I start. I wanted to say that there are a lot of myths and just misinformation out there about autism, like a lot. I'm going to link to a few things in the description that you may want to use to inform yourself. One is my friend Mo, also known as Not So Neurotypical. She does awesome content, especially on what it's like being a girl with autism. She's amazing. Check her out regardless. If you are inspired by this video, or if for any reason you are doing research on autism, go to autistic people first. Don't go to organizations, especially like Autism Speaks. Talk to autistic people first. Autistic people are the ones that experience autism. Autistic people are the ones that know the most about autism because they are the ones that have it and live with that view of the world. All of that being said, my background with autism. Yeah, in middle school, in 8th grade, and a little bit at the beginning of 9th grade, I dated I'm not sure what they identify as now, but at the time they identified as a demigirl. I'm just going to use they. I'm not going to say their name, but they were autistic. They were diagnosed as autistic from what I know of them at the time. And one of the things that they talked to me a lot about was, Ashton, I am 99% sure you're autistic. Having an autistic person tell me, you exhibit a lot of the traits that I do, you seem a lot like me in ways that neurotypical people just aren't. That was the first thing that got me interested into looking, more into autism and more into myself to see, do I align with these things? I also want to say that this is not just my opinion on myself. I've talked to my therapist about a lot of these things, and I do want to talk to her about these things in the future. But my therapist has said, after me explaining my thoughts on it, that she would not be surprised if I do have autism or if I do have sensory processing disorder, which is a related neurological condition. Another disclaimer, every autistic person is different. Nobody experiences autism the same way. Nobody experiences the world the same way. I felt like I should just say that. My dog is rolling around on the bed. He's being silly, I'm sorry. That being said, I'm going to go through a few of the very common traits of autism and talk about how I experience them. And yeah, communication-wise, eye contact is a big one. I have a lot of difficulty maintaining eye contact. I mean, not so much in videos, you can't really see that, but I used to get yelled at a lot by, my parents, teachers, all that sorts of stuff. Like, you're in a conversation with me, make eye contact. No, I'm terrified of eye contact. I don't like it. There are very few people that I can make eye contact with. I can make eye contact with Jack. I can make eye contact with most of my family. Sometimes I can make eye contact with close friends, but 99% of the time, eye contact is nope, I don't like it. I don't have a reason. It just makes me extremely uncomfortable. Another big thing is empathy. One misconception about autism is that autistic people are not empathetic whatsoever, and that's not true. A lot of people think of autism as a spectrum, but it's more like an ice cream bar. Like, you go get your ice cream, and you get your toppings. It might be social misinterpretation of social cues. You might get the topping of repetitive behaviors. You might get the topping of anxiety. You might get all the toppings. You might get like 5 or 6 of the toppings. You might get 20. That's the way a lot of people think of it, and I feel like that's a good analogy. A lot of autistic people are also very highly empathetic, and this is something that I've more recently realized about myself. As my boyfriend makes me watch a lot of movies, I think a lot like, oh, wow, I empathize, fuck, I empathize a lot with most characters. Anybody that I like in a movie, in a book, I get extremely emotionally attached to. People I like in real life, I get extremely emotionally attached to, and I just have a lot of empathy for people that can sometimes get to an uncomfortable level. I get really emotional over movies. If you know me, you know I love Star Wars. I have never watched a Star Wars movie without crying. I cried at Interstellar. I cried at Rogue One, even though, like, I have some opinions on Rogue One that it wasn't my favorite. I cried a lot of movies because I get so emotionally invested in people that aren't even real that I can't help but be so connected and emotionally vulnerable when bad things happen. Something I remember very strongly from my childhood is uh, the show Lazy Town, which is now a meme, but I loved it as a kid. And the villain, bad things had happened to him because he was the villain, but I would always feel so bad for him. Like he would lose something, and I'd be like, oh no, oh I feel really bad. I wouldn't want that to happen to me. I'm just really highly empathetic in a way that I don't think is normal for a neurotypical person, and I'm not neurotypical in the first place. That's another thing. I am diagnosed with anxiety, depression, OCD, but in the neurological world in your brain, a lot of things overlap, and a lot of symptoms of OCD, um, especially do overlap with autism. As for depression and anxiety, 2/3 of autistic adults have depression and anxiety or have experienced it in the past. So, a lot of mental health things do overlap, and that's why it is so hard to sometimes get a diagnosis on certain things. Repetition is another big one for me, although I do think that this is associated with my OCD. This could also be an autistic trait. That's what I mean by the overlapping thing. When I say something wrong, I have to say it 3 times or 5 times, and then if I'm still messing it up, 10, 10, 10, 17, 20, 25, and then up by tens. I repeat things a lot. Uh, uh, I, I, it was my video on OCD where I talked about how much I repeat things, and, but yeah, that's also an autistic trait that I heavily vibrate with. No, that's not the word. Resonate. Another one is special interests. Another thing that you probably know about me if you've watched my videos before is that I have a few, like 5, I guess, extremely, like, specific and intense interests. Bats and LGBTQ plus issues are my main 2 at the moment. They do shift around sometimes, but that's also not a normal thing for special interests. I have things that I get so obsessed with, so into, like, to a point where I could rant for hours and hours about bats. Some of you guys know this. I've actually done a live stream on Instagram before where I just told people like 20 billion facts about bats. It was great. It was fun. Maybe some of you were there for that. I don't know. But like I love bats a lot. Like a lot. And I mean, obviously, I'm passionate about LGBT issues. I own this channel. Like 65% of my videos are related to me being trans or gay. So yeah, I do have really intense interests that I can't even describe how passionate I am about these things. It's not normal, oh man, yeah, I'm passionate about music. No, I have very specific interests that I can retain a lot of information about. Sensory issues is another big one that not a lot of people associate with autism other than autistic people, which is what I'm saying. Listen to autistic people when it comes to autism. But the majority of people with autism do have sensory issues. Either they are oversensitive or undersensitive. And I am a mix of the two, which a lot of autistic people also are. I've done videos on stimming before, a lot of them, not a lot, but a fair amount, and that's, I feel like, how quite a few people have found me. A lot of those people are autistic themselves. I follow quite a number of Instagram accounts that are, run by people that are autistic and run by people that share information about stuff like that. And I love that sort of stuff. As much as I've talked about stimming, I've talked about sensory overload. Sensory overload is something that I do struggle with. In fact, this morning it got really bad. There were a lot more people than there normally are in the spot in my school that I go to and sit with my boyfriend at before school starts, because my bus gets to school 30 minutes before classes actually start, which is at 6:45, which is ridiculous. People were like dropping textbooks multiple times on purpose and yelling at each other like across the room, and it was really bad. My boyfriend actually sat there and covered my ears for me, which is really nice. It's something that he does. I have a lot of problems with loud noises a lot of the times. Things can get overwhelming really, really fast for me. And that is mostly sounds. It can be touch. Certain things I can't touch. A lot of the times I'm also someone that is sensory seeking. I really want a weighted blanket. I love having like heavy things on top of me. I stim a lot. I rock, I flap when I'm happy or interested in something or anxious. I have a giant collection of stim toys. I squeeze things, I chew on so many. It's bad. It's really bad. All my pencils have bite marks on them, and I feel so embarrassed when people ask me for a pencil because I'm like, yeah, okay, but I've chewed on it. So yeah, I am a sensory seeker, but I'm also someone that can get very easily overwhelmed by too many sensory things. Another thing is the inability to detect sarcasm or understand jokes. This was something that I struggled a lot more with when I was younger, and it still kind of is. Once I hear a figure of speech, I need it to be explained to me. My boyfriend will use new ones that I've never heard, and I'm just like, the fuck are you talking about? But then there are ones that my family's used since I was little that I had explained to me when I was little that I'm like, oh, yeah, I know what that means. Like, hit the hay, it took me months to understand. Beat around the bush, I'm always just like, even now, I'm like, why do people say that? There's so many easier ways to say beat around the bush. I don't like, there. Barking up the wrong tree, bigger fish to fry, stuff like that. I need to have stuff like that explained to me, or I'm just not gonna understand. Another one that I've thought about more recently, because I didn't know was a trait of autism, is friends. And I've always hung out with people that are older than me. In elementary school, I was in like second or third grade, and in an after school, my best friend was in fifth grade, and I helped him with his math homework. I got teased for that because when I was in, second grade, all of my friends were so much older than me. And now I'm a junior in high school. Every single one of my friends are seniors. I don't have any close friends that are juniors, but it's so much easier for me to connect to people that are older than me. So that's something that I didn't know was associated with autism, and when I heard it, I was like, that explains that. Echolalia is something that I also didn't know about. It can sometimes be considered stimming, but repeating words or phrases over and over and over is very commonly associated with autism, and that's something that I do and something that I've always done. It doesn't even have to be words, it can be repeated verbal sounds. And I do that, when I'm alone mostly, because I know now that it's really awkward in actual public situations. Bo, please quiet, please. But when I'm alone, a lot of times I will say the same thing, the same thing, the same thing, the same thing, the same thing. Not necessarily the same thing, but like one word or one phrase or one sound just over and over. It helps me get to sleep. It helps me calm down. It helps, like, I don't know why. I can't explain why. My only explanation for a lot of these things is maybe I'm autistic, and that's why I'm talking about this. Behavior patterns are also something that is associated with both autism and OCD. I sucked my thumb until I was in like 6th grade. I literally had to get a retainer on the top of my mouth. They gave me a scar on my tongue, by the way. I have a scar on my tongue, fun fact, to stop me from sucking my thumb because it would cut into my thumb. But yeah, I had a blanket stuffed animal thing that I would constantly rub like this over and over and over. I hum, I tap, I suck on things, I spin around a lot, like on purpose. I flap my arms. That's also associated with stimming. Why am I talking about this again? Unusual attachment to objects and collections are two things that are somewhat related for me that are also autistic traits. I've made videos on some of my collections. I've made videos on a couple of my collections before, but I collect rocks, I collect Canadian coins, I collect American quarters for each state. I used to collect Pokemon cards, I collect dead bugs. I can prove that to you right now. I keep this on my wall. This one, I have butterfly wings and a dragonfly. And these are not like bugs that have been killed. These are bugs that I've found already dead. That's why I don't have a lot of them, because I don't want any bugs that were killed for the pure purpose of decoration. Perfectionism in areas is also a thing that I deal a lot with. I don't want to get too into that because it's kind of self-explanatory, but yeah, perfectionism. Breaking down when being like reprimanded, like punished or lectured or whatever. This is something that I've also dealt a lot with. I don't know, I think I've talked about this before, but I cannot be yelled at. I can't. People yell at me, my mom yells at me, my dad yells at me, I cry. I will immediately break down. I will cry, I will leave. I can't deal with it. I cannot be yelled at. Picky eating. I am a vegetarian, so that's like separate, but my foods do not touch on the plate unless they are being mixed together. They do not touch. I eat one thing at a time. On a plate, I will most of the time go around my circle. In a lunchbox, I take one thing out, eat it, and my lunchbox is closed in between this thing, and then I take one other thing out and eat it. I don't spread it out and like eat things separately. It's weird. I don't know. I eat one thing at a time. And there are a lot of foods that I cannot stand the texture of. Texture is a comfort objects are another thing. When I was younger, it was my cozy. Now this is one of my comfort objects, as well as Jack's jacket, which you've probably seen that I wear both of them like pretty much 24/7. As for like physical things, autism doesn't really express itself in many physical ways, but I do walk on my toes a lot, which is commonly associated with autism. I have problems processing auditory things. When I watch YouTube, I use the double tap to skip back thing so much because I have to listen to things twice or three times before I can like process it. I hear what's going on, but my brain takes a while to put together what's being said. Or like people have conversations and I'll say pardon, but they don't actually need to say it again. I just need extra time to put together what's being said. It takes me a while to respond to things because I hear a sentence and I hear it, I just don't comprehend it the first time. I also recently took a Psych Central like quiz, like autism screening quiz that a lot of professionals actually use as a kind of guideline. Psych Central is not by any means a doctor. I'm not diagnosing myself through this quiz. I just thought it was interesting. Because a score of 0 to 29 means no autism is likely, a score of 30 to 33 is possible autism, a score of 34 and up is that autism is very likely, and I got a 40. So, one last thing before I end this video is I want to talk about diagnosis. I'm not diagnosed. As I discussed earlier, my therapist does kind of agree with where I am about it. And I'm so conflicted about getting a diagnosis because on one hand, I want to know. I would feel a lot better if I knew that these things that I do are because of something and not just because there's something wrong with me, because autism is not something wrong with you. Autism is a different way of your brain working, and if I could attribute so many little things that I do that are considered abnormal to something that I have, I would be so much more comfortable. On the other hand, the diagnosis process is often really invasive, and because I'm not a child, it's even harder. So I don't know if I want a diagnosis. As of right now, I'm not looking into one, but it is something that I want to know. I think that's all I wanted to talk about. Again, I will be deleting any comment that I find disrespectful to autistic people in general or pitying. I do not want that. But yeah, that's where I am on this. A few people have asked me to make a video on this after my stimming videos, so here it is. You're welcome. I'm sorry if it was long or rambly. But yeah, if you're still watching at this point, wow, you are dedicated. Goodbye. I hope you are secure in your own mental state, and I'll talk to you later, maybe.